to the new world, same as the old world. All right, we should get started. I know a couple people pinged me and weren't able to make it, so we're recording, but I will turn it over to Brian. Brian's no stranger to Conclave, having showed some work that he did earlier in the year on getting ChatGPT to basically drive a red versus blue or US versus China sort of tabletop exercise war game. This time he's brought together a couple of tools. There's been some recent talk on the email threads about ABMs and large language models, and I think that's going to end up being a really fruitful mashup. But Brian today is going to talk about a different mashup using LLMs that I think may be equally interesting. So, Brian, take it away.
I missed that on the ABMs for using large language models. That's definitely an interesting topic. So can you see my octopus AI thing? All right, so this is a DALL-E from OpenAI generated image, but second, trying to figure out how to make this go forward now.
What was your prompt for that?
Okay, here we go. It was a person sitting at the center of a socio-technical network fused with AI, helping them to explore.
And did you specify octopus, or did
I told it I wanted it tentacular.
Oh, interesting. All right.
I don't think it's a word, but it understood what I meant. So, all right. So this is a project on AI education, a little bit national security, and this started from a hackathon project about AI and national security, and we could pick subtopics, and so I picked education. And so this is essentially my speculation about the future of AI in education, and then a proof of concept of some software. So the kind of main policy questions and looking at how these areas connect, we can look at education as increasing human capital. And when we look at national security, one lens to look at this through is essentially what capital should we try to obtain, and then how should we use that capital? How should we try to obtain that capital when you're doing national security planning? So in education terms, that's essentially what should we be educating, and then how should we be educating to do that? And when you incorporate AI, I think the real term of art here is intelligence amplification, which is a fascinating area of research. This is actually where the internet came out of. And essentially what this is about is putting humans in the loop with AI, as opposed to just AI or human. And so I'm going to, I can't see my screen here. All right, so I'm going to get into that. And a little bit before I do, just my background in this. I tutored for 4 years in college, and then I taught for 4 years, a year in middle school, and then 3 years in high school. And kind of my main takeaways from education is most people don't learn like you, and it's very hard to put yourself into the mind of somebody who's learning. I'm sure you've all had experiences that being an expert in the field does not make you a good teacher. And there's a very big disconnect between this. So there's all different types of learning styles that are just very hard to overcome. I think I may have gone. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah. The second is that motivation is really important. And if students don't want to learn, you can force information down their throat, but you cannot force them to retain it. It's gone within a month, and it's totally pointless to teach. The third is feedback is really key. The rate that you can give feedback and the quality of that feedback. And the fourth is kind of this view that knowledge is a network. And that's what I'm showing on the pictures here, that like if you look at the way trigonometry is presented, it's in a very linear fashion, when really knowledge is represented on the right as a kind of network. And the format, the mediums we're learning in are largely text-based, which give you very linear learning styles. Marshall McLuhan talks about the medium is the message, and it's just very hard to understand certain concepts when you have a linear format like text is the basis to learning them. And I think a big part of this is expanding out into multimodal mediums where we have vision and audio and tactile, and this relates back to the learning style. The second is this concept of the 80-20 rule, which is one of the first things I learned teaching, which is essentially you move on when 80% of the class understands the material, which means at all times, essentially like 70% of the class is bored and then 20% of the class doesn't understand what's going on. So it's a system that if you're in second grade and you lose a concept in math, you can have a broken link in a chain that just propagates throughout the rest of your education. And so a lot of what really teaching is identifying where the broken link in the chain is. And again, it's hard to do when learning is represented in a linear fashion. You need to be able to kind of see the whole network of relationships. So that's my general thoughts. And now going back to the actual question, how does AI or intelligence amplification change what it means to be educated when you have access to a hyper intelligent entity that has mastered all of human knowledge? And I think a good example for this is how calculators changed what it means to be good at math. Essentially what they do is they offload all of the boring low level cognitive tasks and allow you to focus on higher level concepts. And AI is going to do that across all domains. It's essentially going to offload all the tasks you don't want to do and allow you to focus on the high priority, high consequence tasks. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this concept I'm talking about that AI, human and AI is more powerful than AI or human. There's an extra greater sign in there, but they each have weaknesses and strengths. And really what it's going to mean to be educated in this future is being a good human in the loop, which means understanding where you are strong and AI is weak and your relative differences. The third thing is that I think essentially the limiting factor in these systems is going to be human self-control. AI is going to be able to tell you what to do. It's not going to be able to force you to do it. It's going to be hyper intelligent. Most of the times it's going to have the right solutions to problems, and it's going to be your own cognitive biases that try and habits that try and force you to not do the right thing. So metacognition, emotional intelligence, all these skills that are difficult to teach now are going to be hugely important, I think, in this future. So the second thing is, how is this going to change the model of education? And I think one of the main things to understand about education is a huge amount of what goes on in education is geared towards surveilling, controlling, and measuring the students. So every teacher would love to go in and say, pick a project you're really interested in and work really hard on it, and I'll go around and mentor you and help guide each one of you. And if students are interested in the same concept, group together and work on this project, that would be every teacher's dream. It's not possible because you're always going to have defectors and people that try and slack off. And so essentially the structure of teachers standing at the front of the room, having everybody be quiet, is a large part of surveillance and control mechanism. The other part is the measurement, the assessment. We know this with standardized testing, that so much goes into the measurement, teaching towards tests, for example, but there's a lot lost in the need to measure these systems and the limited ability of the teacher to do this. The other thing is, I think the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure of everybody going to a physical location at school, going to individual classrooms where they sit there and then transfer in a very rigid structure, is going to dissolve, and it's going to be a lot more community and outside world oriented, and highly personalized, maximize engagement, gamified, and using immersive technologies. So I think this is essentially the main transitions that's going to happen. And so I'm going to do my estimation on what this is going to do in effect. So we're going to offload all of these basic cognitive tasks that we don't want to do and be able to specialize more. So that's about twice the amount of time in specialization. It's going to match your learning profile and individual needs. So that's another double is what I'm estimating. they're going to be in an immersive gamified environment, which is going to another double. I'm sorry, I kind of included multimodal twice, all the different learning styles, but there is a slight difference between optimizing for an individual profile and then allowing, you could optimize for an individual profile with text alone. And then the instant feedback of AI being able to constantly surveil, and the instant you go off track, being able to give you targeted feedback is going to be a massive boost. So I'm estimating like 32 times from there. And then that's really just the beginning. I think you can get another 2x out of automated reminder systems. So pretty much like 95% of everything you've ever learned is gone within a week or a month. And you have this learning curve here of forgetting that's pretty scientifically tested. And there's empirical ways of reinforcing this learning curve with periodic reminders to store it into long-term memory. And if you implement this sort of system, I'm very confident you can get cut down that forgettal rate by half, get another 2x. And then I think other like technical things like recording everything in your life, so you don't, again, offloading these cognitive tasks and presenting it to you right when you need it is going to be huge. So here's my very conservative 128x efficiency in education, and then I throw in another 2x for things I haven't thought of, which puts the approximate 12th grader at like 3,072nd grade when you do the math. And I think that sounds ridiculous, but from my own experience, because I've gotten into this, and it's, in a lot of cases, the multiple is infinity, because there are things that I can do now with AI that I literally couldn't have done given an unlimited time scale. If only because of my lack of self-control, that if you gave me the task, it would have been so complicated that I would have given up somewhere along the way. So I think what that 3,000 means is kind of arbitrary, but I think in terms of functional skills and being in terms of being able to accomplish and build things, they will be highly adapted. So here's a kind of learning model I like that looks towards what the future is going to be, and it basically puts education around what the student's interested in, what opportunities there are for the student career, and then relationships, which is a crucial part in an increasingly digitalized society. So what they're showing is that education doesn't just take place in a physical school, it's embedded in the community, in the home, in your interests. And they show kind of a model for how a student might develop their interests over time, where they start building things and learning and watching YouTube videos and fixing bikes. So this is a much more realistic model for what the future is going to look like. And there's new stuff with image recognition with ChatGPT that's actually absolutely going to blow all of education out of the water. It understands images like a human, so you can take a picture of the bike and ask it how to fix it, and it can go tell you the tools and step-by-step instructions on how to fix a bike or a car. It can do these complicated tasks, and you can take a picture of any test, and it'll essentially be able to give you the answer to it in the very near future. So the assessment model is broken. And there's just all sorts of new capabilities that are opening up. So that's kind of my view of the future of education. And this is going to be the software that I wrote to kind of show what this might look like in practice. And the first kind of concept to get here is that generative AI is going to be able to create real-time, flexible, and individualized lesson plans. And this is just a really simple example of, you can just say, give me a list of things needed to build a trebuchet, and it can put this out in real time. So that's a really simple example. But what it's important to understand is that text is everything in generative AI. And what I said here is, if you can think of what you want, generative AI can build it. So you don't even have to really know what you want. And actually, this was how I started my prompt, Todd. And so here, I didn't really know what I wanted. I just explained what I was basically doing, and then it gave me a whole bunch of ideas about what I wanted in the picture. So this is another level of that. Like, to use Google, you have to know what you want, kind of, to even be able to search for it. To use these AIs, you're at a much more abstracted level where you can just kind of vaguely know what you want, and it will be able to create it for you. The second thing is, ChatGPT is text to text, which everybody's familiar with. Midjourney and DALL-E, a lot of people are familiar with, it's just text to image, but text to video, text to 3D environment, these all exist. And text to immersive, gamified, extended reality narrative environments is going to be here, I think, within a year. So all you have to be able to do to create a flexibilized individual lesson plan is start with something like this, any statement, and it will, if you can generate the text, you can generate fully immersive 3D environments in the near future to represent it. And so I think, yeah.
So just to pull on the search, your analogy or compare and contrast with search, it kind of strikes me that, so you're saying for search you have to know what you're looking for, and then Google Foo is basically being able to understand different ways to get at, but you still kind of have to know what you're looking for. So it feels to me like what you're describing with generative AI is almost much more of a YouTube model, where you may search for something, but then it gives you recommendations which may not even be directly related. But it's the kind of, the I've fallen into YouTube and I can't get out thing. It feels like generative AI is more like that than like a search. So it's kind of like a recommendation engine that's on massive steroids.
Or another way to put it is, it's like Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs knows what the consumer wants better than the consumer does. So you say, it's really annoying to have to call people on this physical landline, and it generates an iPhone for you. So it's the mapping from just, I have a problem or a general goal to a very specific, super good solution. And it's not having to have the base knowledge to even start to think about what you want, which is hard to even get ground based on a lot of these issues, is a huge step forward in leapfrogging you over. In the same way that a calculator like offloads lower level processes, this is a massive step towards offloading.
But do you see the integration of generative AI with search to actually be kind of handicapping it? Because you're using that metaphor where you need to know what you're looking for, or are we just in a short transitional phase, and search is, as we know it, will likely go away to something that will be much more LLM native?
Yeah, I think it will be much more LLM type. Right now, ChatGPT is hooked up to like Bing, but it's just not the same as talking to ChatGPT correctly. It's the level of creativity is so much higher.
The search metaphor handicaps the LLM in this case, it seems.
Yeah. The intrinsic, it's not using the full spectrum of capabilities that it will have in the near future. But yeah, so another just concept to throw in here is that in the near future, if you have a hyper intelligent AI, it's going to be highly manipulative, and you're essentially going to be unable to operate in this future environment with hyper intelligent AI without having an AI co-pilot that acts as the interface to other AIs. Now, you're just going to be leaving yourself massively exposed if you're directly interacting with these things. And so your AI co-pilots are essentially going to be running your life. They're going to have a very deep understanding of you. That's probably going to be personal. You don't want hundreds of AIs to have incredibly deep personalized understanding of every aspect of your life. You're probably just going to have one AI co-pilot that's going to essentially run your whole life. And I think if you think about the form of this educational software, it's going to get rolled out with kids, and it's going to build up profiles of them over the 12 years they're in schools. It's already going to have these massive profiles. And I think it's likely that whatever educational software is implemented for students is going to evolve into their AI co-pilot over time.
And then do you see the co-pilot, there being different qualities of co-pilots? So do we run into an equity issue sort of out of the gate, that if you have lots of money, you'll be able to afford a better AI co-pilot? Kind of like private education, right? Versus.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, whoever gets AGI first, I think it's a scary thought to think about what somebody can do with a year leap on on artificial general intelligence if they come up with it in some corporate or government lab. Yeah, I think that's a real concern. So here's like a possible like a narrative structure. So this is when I was thinking through, okay, so if this is what the future looks like, it's this gamified, immersive environment. One way to do this is to represent everything you can learn as a skill tree. So everything becomes goal oriented. You say, I want to be able to do this, or I want to be able to do that. And it kind of maps out the end destination and then plots your course to get there. So all of the stuff in school where it's like, why am I learning the quadratic equation? You never learn anything without a purpose behind it, something the student's actually interested in learning. And so you can imagine being an avatar in this and having kind of a virtual co-pilot and exploring this infinite multiverse of different educational opportunities. So this is a kind of mock-up of what I'm imagining. You kind of put on your virtual reality goggles. You can say what you want to learn, or you can have your AI co-pilot suggest something, and you pick a learning goal, which is essentially a quest, and you go through your little portal and you pop out into a virtual world. And so this would be like if you wanted to learn about the Boston Tea Party, you could go walk around in this virtual world and interact with historical figures and talk to them, and then learn about the Boston Tea Party. And your goal is to like go infiltrate them, and you've got to get past the guards, and you've got to have learned enough about the Boston Tea Party to have done that. So in text format, this is really not that hard of a game to build in AI. And then once you've specified what the game is, it will have no problem constructing a 3D virtual environment like this. So for any tasks you can imagine, just in real time, it will populate this unique for each student. And so here's what I was thinking for a simpler prototype version is essentially doing this with Wikipedia. And you can imagine kind of clicking on Wikipedia links. And as you branch out into different concepts, you can learn all sorts of different things. And so now I'm going to show you the prototype I built for this. And if you're interested in the specifics, it uses ChatGPT for image and text. And then I use the Wikipedia API to get information from Wikipedia, and a Chrome extension that's going to capture information from the web pages. And then it stores the information from the web pages. And I'm showing it in a thing called Streamlit and displaying stuff. So let me switch my sharing here.
So Brian, just while you're doing this, the Gopal brought up that you're kind of making the assumption that these are good generative AI products that we have. And sort of my response was, well, it's worth doing a best case arc, because then if you lay out sort of the best case scenario, you can go back and you can start to break pieces along the way and see what the implications are. But I wonder if you've thought about, is there a weaponized version of this arc or a worst case scenario that you've thought about?
Well, you want to like expand a little bit on what you're meaning so I can zone into my answer? I think there's lots of potential threats.
Yeah, so the way I see it is like in the traditional educational system, like we have mechanisms in place to, let us say, license teachers or regulate what kind of learnings are students getting out of universities or schools. So whatever they are learning, is it the right thing they are learning or not? Right. So, but like with generative AI, so for example, if let us say ChatGPT being one product, if it is giving me some suggestions or recommendations, who is there to like regulate that? Am I getting, are students getting good recommendation or bad recommendation? Like we are, like Mo and me, we are building a model where we are trying to tweak and falsify information to like generate our one propaganda, right? So so all these efficiency gains, I agree, and I'm very optimistic about these things. But I guess like we also have to like Todd said, we have to look from both perspective as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think those are good points. So I'm building other stuff on the side because a lot of this are subcomponents in my thesis work. So one of them is like automated literature review that can detect meta-analysis in different kind of papers and summarize the results. And Google actually has a large language model called Galactica that's trained purely on scientific papers, and it can just generate information purely based on that training. So if that's your standard, I don't think that's particularly helpful in most educational contexts, but I think what is really helpful is not generating it from scratch in most cases. It's just relying on the vast repository of knowledge on YouTube and other places. I know I was never as good of a teacher, and I would never be as good of a teacher as the best teachers on YouTube. There's a reason, there's metrics, and that they are the best people. And it's really wild that instead of just playing a video and then going around and helping students individually, you're forced into a system of just talking in front of the class. It's basically, I think we'll have more to do in the future for high level stuff drawing from academic sources, for more lower level educational stuff relying on the best teachers out there and bringing that content into immersive virtual environments. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was also thinking from the perspective of, like, for example, like you mentioned, Google summarization tool. So a couple of days back, I was using a summarization tool featured by OpenAI, meaning like I was using LangChain to summarize a large body of text. But now I have this huge task in front of me that I have to go back to the text and see whether it is doing a good job or not. So for a small like data set, it's very easy to verify, perhaps evaluate. But if we are talking about education itself, like where there's a vast amount of literature on like different topics in different subject areas. So I think it would be, we should also account for a huge cost that would go behind fact checking, like whether it is doing a good job or not. So yeah. But anyways, I do understand your points, and then I'm also very optimistic about GI.
Yeah, I'm super optimistic about all of this stuff, and I think essentially the large language models not being up to date problem is going to be solved. There's going to be autonomous agents behind the scene that every answer they give, it's going to be checked against internet and multiple different sources and viewed by multiple different autonomous agents from multiple different perspectives and checked. It's going to be, I think in the future, it's going to be run through so many different layers of safety protocols for any mainstream large language model that I always think about like driverless cars. Like, yeah, they may kill people, but compared to humans, I'm going to take large language models every day of the week. So can you guys see this node that says Wikipedia here?
Yep.
Okay. So this is my attempt to build the knowledge tree, and hopefully this is working. I'm clicking it and interesting. Give me 1 second. You know what? Let me just restart this because I want this to work.
I don't think you have enough browser tabs open.
Oh, yeah, that was on my to-do list, was to switch it into a new window so you guys couldn't see that. And okay, so a new one should be popping up here. Basically, what this is going to do is Wikipedia has top level categories. So it organizes all of their knowledge into different domains. It's like history, physical science, philosophy, that sort of thing. And so I went to Wikipedia and I scraped this top level structure. So here you can see it branches out into the different topics. And so I can pick one. I can pick let's go natural and physical sciences. And it'll pop out again. My scraping's not perfect, but it's pretty good here. And you can kind of follow these down the branches into new topic areas until it gets to the page level. And then this would theoretically could take you to something. So let's say you've identified what you want to learn about. Metaphysics is a pretty cool topic. I like metaphysics. So I could say, tell me about metaphysics. And if anybody has any questions, just feel free to shout out, because there's going to be a little bit of processing time here.
So, your visual map is essentially you're showing visually hyperlinking.
Yeah,
it's a representation of hyperlinking where you don't have a text breadcrumb trail, but you have a visual map of how this information is organized.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad I left my tabs open, because my tabs almost always look like this, and then I have 3 or 4 of these, and then I come back and I have no idea where to start or how any of this relates to what I was originally researching.
Yeah, the best you can do is hold down your back button and then hope that you can go back in your browser history to find something.
So yeah, so this is on Wikipedia, but this is a Chrome extension. So this really, this is actually not tracking link clicks, but the other thing down here will. So I said, tell me about metaphysics, and this is apparently what OpenAI generated for tell me about metaphysics. I'm not sure about that one, pretty creepy looking. But it says metaphysics is a branch of philosophy. Okay, so it gets into that. Metaphysics, and we can put in our research topic, and it will create a learning path for us. And so this should be a learning path that goes from simple to complicated. It's like a 5-step learning path, and this is generated by ChatGPT. And then what I do is I take each one of those steps on the learning path, and I use the Wikipedia API to hopefully find relevant articles. So the first one is metaphysics, branches of metaphysics, ontology. So this should be going in kind of increasingly complex order, which it arguably is. And it generated a little picture here. So you can automatically generate quiz questions on any of these topics. And
so that is all driven from ChatGPT's knowledge base, but it's pulling it's for more information, it's embedding links to Wikipedia.
Correct. And so it can generate quiz questions on anything, and you could obviously put in automated scoring and letting students move on, any of that stuff. So these are all Wikipedia links. And so what happens is every time I open up one of these new links, it is storing this information about what page I started on and what page I ended on. And I can't show it to you because I forgot to pull it up. But also, if you double click any of these paragraphs, it will also add that text. And so that's being stored in a place you can't see. And so just as I'm clicking around, it's storing all of this information. So now I can come back here and I can display, this would be the actual graph of my link traversal. I'm going to explain these other buttons while that's loading. So I also have a simplify button. So if you get to one of these topics and you think it's too complicated, you can hit simplify and it will give you a simpler list of topics. So here was the path I just explored. I thought I opened up some, pull some from the same page so you can see that it branches. So it will track what you're researching. You can ask it to generate simpler categories, and it will again find Wikipedia pages to help you look at those simpler categories. You will find more elaborate categories. If you feel like you've mastered topic, it will give you more complicated categories. So here's what it looks like after a little bit more exploration. So I'll say I want more elaborate categories, it'll do that. And then I also built in a dynamic button. And so this button you can make do whatever you want. So in this case, I just put in there, give me 3 fun facts. And now when you hit the dynamic button, it will generate 3 fun facts about any one of these topics. So I'm actually kind of curious what 3 fun facts about ontology would be.
And that's not drawing from Wikipedia, right? That's drawing from its internal.
Correct. That is
Data.
ChatGPT. This is based on ChatGPT's definition of what
Right,
a fun fact about ontology is. So here, this was, it tried to find more complicated topics. These two, it wasn't able to find a Wikipedia article. So find out what that is. And then, so as I clicked around on all of these pages, the text in the paragraph that every link I clicked on is stored. And then anytime I went in and double clicked, so right now it just stored that. If I clicked phonological awareness, it stores the text in that paragraph. And I can come in and ask it to summarize what I've been doing. So I can say, just summarize it, or I can give it more complicated tasks, or things I could say, you know, give me a list of all of the people that have showed up in the research or all of the places, or whatever it is you want to know.
So can I submit a feature request?
Yeah.
So I love the network map because, but what I would really love to be able to do is, you know, when you're clicking around, you invariably click some pages that are awesome and some pages that are useless.
Yeah.
So being able to just do a thumbs up, thumbs down on that page and have that represented in the network map would be awesome.
Yeah, I like that idea. And that's the end of my presentation. So gave me 3 fun facts about ontology. I told to summarize, and it's a mix because I clicked on just random links, but here is information about all of this stuff. So I could say, pull out the names of people mentioned, and it will pull that out too. So if anybody has any questions, that is my software.
Now all you need to do is have it pull down the information, have it generate disinformation, and then have that upload it up to Wikipedia to edit the Wikipedia page. So
yeah, there's a whole community. Oh, there's Wikipedia has problems with like notorious trolls that just will go in there and spend countless hours making tiny minor revisions in Wikipedia articles for no reason. Anyways, anybody have any questions, comments?
This is really nice. This is really cool. I just wanted to ask you one thing. What application did you use to stream these responses here? Is it Streamlit or something like that?
Yeah, this is Streamlit.
Okay.
And I'm honestly, I think I'm gonna have to move to something a little bit higher powered if I want to extend this, because it doesn't have the interactivity. And so you see it like every time I click something, it's reloading the whole page, which is annoying.
yeah, but for proof of concept, this is like perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that this is. I'm really impressed by your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one thing which I sometimes do when I prompt it, I say, okay, I explain my situation. I say, okay, this is my situation. For example, I want to learn in a month or so. Then give me titles. I mean, how I can do it, like for planning too. I mean, it's just not the content itself, but for planning, how to do in a month, or what are the most important topics to learn a specific skill, for example. And it does a great job. I mean, it creates a plan. And then if you say, I want to become addicted to it, I mean, something that I really stick to it, then it's actually planned out for you too. Like you start with some smaller actions, which if you pursue, then it becomes like a part of habit, like a habit that you do on a daily basis or weekly basis. It tells you how to use to something I mean, it becomes like part of your habit. For example, coding as an example. I mean, just so much potential that I can see.
Yeah, and I think that gets to kind of education has become much more goal oriented. I've never really at any point in my education felt, well, in grad school it's a little bit different, but especially through high school, like I was actually working towards a specific purpose. It was just I'm checking a bunch of boxes, and once I check all these boxes, I'll be graduated. But and this gets back to only needing to know what you want and the like distinction between search, where when you're trying to actually accomplish something, it's very difficult to say, go into Google and say, I want to accomplish this and get back relevant search results. You have to have enough of a base understanding to be able to Google all the subcomponent parts and how they interconnect with each other, and then go learn each one of those things. And so it's like the structure of search restricts you from being able to do goal-oriented knowledge acquisition. But ChatGPT changes that, and I think this is going to be it's changed the way my brain works, I think, in the way I become much more goal oriented, and
Yeah,
it allows you, once you know that the capability is out there to ask those kind of questions, it changes the things you think about. It's just when you know those capabilities aren't out there, you don't even think about asking goal oriented questions. But once you know you can ask them, it's opened my mind to asking all sorts of questions I would have never asked a year ago.
yeah, no, absolutely. With the personalization component, because it's personalized in a way, just it's you and the model, and you can, based off what you learn and how you learn, you can personalize it, customize it for your own, which is different than another person. And that's, I think, it's the huge benefit that it gives compared to traditional institutions. I mean, I can see, I mean, if you combine with that AR, VR technology, I mean, imagine that you combine the two, then you have probably more like a one-on-one conversation with a tutor, like with a teacher, with someone, like it's a person of that, like a avatar. You can see lots of potential out here, and it's accessible for everyone across the world. I mean, is no one is like guarding these knowledge anymore compared to the traditional institutions, which you have so many barriers to get into.
So Brian, one challenge I see, so one thing I think that would be interesting to do is do a little bit of a differential analysis based on what level of education you're talking about, because I think, as you said, grad school is different, right? Undergrad is different. I think high school is different than middle school, is different than K through 6. So I think there's some tweaking of sort of the framing. The one thing that I worry about, and this may be just I'm too locked into an old model of thinking about it, but if you, and this is especially the case for younger students, how do you get them to learn about things that you think they should know about, but they may not be interested in? Right? Because if it's just what is a student interested in, it's like I have some colleagues who are having conversations about civics, curriculum, because we were supposed to have an informed electorate, and so their students should probably learning things about civics. I would argue that learning some things about the natural world has value because of the way it plays out. But if a student gets to just pick the things that they're interested in, I guess then does it become a question of getting them interested in a breadth of topics?
So I think there's two things. I think the gamification technology will essentially allow you to trick students into learning things they're not interested in by putting it inside of a wrapper of all sorts of bells and whistles. You sneak it under the surface.
As long as you're okay with tricking them in, I guess it's just is because this may end up being a fundamental pedagogical argument, right? About what are the things that students need to learn, because, and then given this, if there are things that they want to learn that they're not interested in, then we can trick them into it, which I think is valuable. But I think there may also be some people arguing pedagogically we should throw out a lot of the stuff that we've traditionally been teaching. And there's a, I think the whole focus on learning coding is maybe a cautionary tale here, given how good large language models are at writing code. So have we done a disservice in that, in that flip that's going on? So.
And one other comment, I don't think I mentioned this, but it is in one of the slides, that essentially, I think what education is there's kind of a core set of skills that are required to be a functional adult, and you can knock those out and then you go into specialization. And I think what this cognitive, most of those core skills to be an adult will be cognitively offloaded, or have the ability to be cognitive. It'll do your taxes better than you can do it. It can do your grocery shopping better than you can do it. Like all of these things, it's going to offload. So that stage of education where you're learning the core skills is not going to take 16 years. It's going to take a short period of time, and then students move almost instantly into specialization.
But then the other argument, and Gopal, I'll go to you in a second. The other argument that I and others have made for years, which is one of the most important things about organized education, is socialization skills, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if we offload the boring tasks, I think you're right that we can compress the technical knowledge piece of education, but I'm not sure if we can accelerate the socialization piece of it.
I actually think so. This is one of the things I'm really excited about. Is I think there's essentially two core capacities, and one is going to be understanding your relative strengths against AI, and the other one is going to be self-control, which is essentially metacognition, emotional intelligence, self-regulation, that sort of thing. And I think those are going to be the key skills that AI is going to be able to teach, and I think it is going to be able to teach it at a level that far surpasses especially once you take in biometric sensors that are able to detect your emotional states and internal processes, and just have very, very deep levels of intelligence into your psychology. They'll be able to teach you all sorts of cognitive tricks and strategies to, I think, help this next generation. I think this next generation is already, rates of depression and stuff are going up, but my experience teaching was that they are much, much more aware and educated about mental health and these sorts of things than my generation was.
Interesting. Gopal, did you get your question answered, or?
No. I just wanted to give my comment on your comment that how can we make students learn things that they might not be interested in the first place. I would like to believe that most of the times, myself as a student, the things that I don't want to learn are those things that I don't have enough good reasons to learn. So if I would like to believe that if we can give good enough reasons for why students should learn something, then they might be interested to learn, even if they find it boring. So for example, I had a subject called, let us say, history of Nepalese economics, right? And if I don't know why am I learning that, and if I'm just learning that for the purpose of grades, then I might find it boring. So perhaps we can also exploit GI capabilities to ignite that interest as well. So when I'm searching something, and then so GI can recommend, okay, you should also learn these things because this is important for these regions, and you can picture why this is important because with this you can also learn these things. So perhaps we can use GI for that as well.
And I think a lot of this, I agree with that. I think a lot of this gets back to my opinion is, in general, it's not that people don't know what the right course of action is. It's that they choose not to do the right course of action, knowing it's not. So it's like in high school, it was never like, oh, what? No one ever told me I shouldn't do drugs. No one ever told me I should do my homework tonight. No one ever told me like I should do work before play. It's like everybody knows all of these things you're told your whole life, and then you just choose not to do them. So I think with this concept of like there's things you don't want to learn, but you know they're beneficial to learn, the way like generating the intrinsic motivation to things that have long-term benefits but are short-term really annoying and a pain to learn is an aspect of self-regulation. So I think that's if you have a person that's mentally well adjusted and you can't convince them that something is worth learning, then it may not be worth learning.
Yeah, so you bring up a core point that I've actually been talking about lately about internal versus external motivation in education, right? And so I think that again, if you look at the trajectory of the current education model, we go from when you start in elementary school, you are very externally motivated, right? You are told what to learn and you're told that grades are important and whatnot. And then eventually, for those that end up in graduate school, I'm a firm believer that graduate school should be almost entirely internally motivated, that grades don't matter, and that it's you're there, you've got a purpose, and you're going to learn the stuff that you need to learn, come hell or high water. So I think what'll be interesting to see is how we can create capabilities that flip that model so that everybody becomes internally motivated. And maybe that's something that just there's a spectrum in the population, and some people are just we will not be able to flip them on internal motivation. I don't know. This sort of starts to beg all sorts of questions like what the hell do IQ tests mean? And we talk about a spectrum that some people are smarter than others, but then we talk about different kinds of intelligence. And so now when you start to pull large language models into this and then say, well, we're going to offload a whole bunch of stuff that we have previously assessed people and determined that they were smart because they could do those things. Now it's like everything gets kind of thrown up in the air for redefinition.
Yeah, I think we're heading towards an existential crisis as a world. But I think I really the metacognition, and I think you will be able to flip people. I think especially once you combine it with biometric sensors, there is going to be some incredibly powerful techniques that you're able to teach people starting at young ages. That this is probably an area where I'm optimistic. Much more optimistic about the malleability of human nature than most people. But I think if you start really young, so just in one thing, so one of the things I'm really excited about is the brain can learn extra senses. So you can you can embed sensors inside of your body that will detect magnetic fields, and over time your brain will rewire. It's the same way where people learn with echolocation to see. You can have emotional sensors embedded in your body. You can have all these sorts of different things that'll give you real-time feedback. So much of, I think, problems around self-regulation come from self-deception and having real-time accurate feedback on what you're actually doing. Like when you're having conversations and you get into arguments with people, they always have different versions of the conversation. You're going to have an AI that's able to go, no, you were the asshole in this situation. You were in the wrong. I think we're going to be moving towards, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits in that area.
So it's interesting, you're also describing some of the recent research on hallucinogens.
Yeah.
That those, as opposed to the sort of traditional old school thought of people use that to get away from reality and they just wanted to see hallucinations, that actually in clinical settings, it allows people to actually see their own issues with self-regulation and sort of process things that they couldn't otherwise process. So I think looking at, so the only thing that, well, there are a lot of things that give me pause, but the one issue with the biosensors is you just start to get into the issues of how old do we have to worry about age limits on these things. Some of these discussions were happening around VR 10 years ago, right? Does there need to be a minimum age limit? Do VR headsets rewire a child's brain in a way that different stimuli don't? And then just the guardrails that'll need to get put in, because as you start to have this much understanding about individual metacognition, and you have so many data, so much data coming out and so many ways to manipulate going in, the ability to do nefarious things just also becomes, you get 2x multipliers for that as well.
Yeah, I think it is going to be AI versus AI. I think everybody will have to have an AI co-pilot, or you're just going to get taken to the, like, you're just going to get destroyed all day by the other AIs. And I think even if you have a hyper intelligent AI versus a super hyper intelligent AI, the hyper intelligent AI he may not be able to optimize, like he may not be able to win in a game against the even more intelligent AI, but he'll be able to avoid any highly negative consequential decisions. It may, like, the degree of optimization, I think, is going to be pretty small. It'll be really good at avoiding catastrophe, but we'll lose on the margins. And I think the gains from AI are going to be so great that I'm not so worried about the losses on the margins.
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Brian, thanks. This has been awesome. I look forward to our AI overlords, especially the benevolent ones.